Today we're going to look at the fifth and most important law of all, which states that everything changes except the first four laws. And often we humans subconsciously underestimate it because we don't allow ourselves to understand it. How come everything changes except the first four laws?
Basically, as a sentence, as a text, we accept that it is a law that explains how absolutely everything is subject to development, to change, except for the laws themselves. That is, it is accepted as a law that affirms the laws themselves. And the idea here of the fifth law is much deeper. Everything changes, except the four laws of creation, of existence, is an urge, a challenge to change. The idea here is to realize that if we do not change, we will not exist. No one thinks about it. If we sit in one place, have no development, no unfolding of potential, no new research, no research on the subject of life, we keep ourselves at the limit of what we think is sufficient research for us. But then, in this sufficiency, we forget that our mission is the very study of the interaction between the self and the environment. And if this ceases, if this change is stopped, we ourselves become thoughtless of all that is and cease to exist.
The first four laws, do they change?
The first four laws are immutable. Why is this so? Well, because as facts, in order to exist, we have already specified in the four laws that in order to exist, these four laws are 100% valid. Otherwise, if any of them are broken or changed, it means that we ourselves will not exist. And it's that simple and basic. As long as one just tries and thinks about it. Whereas the fifth law is a little more global, a little deeper, a little more meaningful. And it is change. Because if you don't change, you cease to exist. But not as a cessation of existence itself, but as a cessation of the element which has given up on development.
Can you repeat it again? Change as?
Change as you develop. By sharing, interacting with the environment, because if you stop changing, you stop interacting with that environment, which is the purpose of your life. Of life in general. The meaning of life is in interaction. And if we stop changing, it means that we stop ourselves to a limitation that we have chosen. But then we become meaningless to the surrounding world, to everything that is. Because the meaning of being in everything that is to constantly seek new and new unfoldings of ourselves.
And there are people who say, for example, that people don't change. They are who they are. They put on masks. And in fact, it turns out that they have always been the same people. And they don't change. He who is like that is like that.
Here, an elementary rule is laid down here in this line, which is that if we set out to explore a constraint in its variance, we do not abandon the exploration of the constraint in its variance, even if that constraint is very short, i.e., We may only exist for 10 minutes of our own life. To explore exactly those 10 minutes, and then we will live for 10 minutes.
Yes, but for example, if we know a person for 20 years and continue to live with him but know all his tricks and all his nonsense, but nevertheless accept him as he is, we tell our friends, "Look now, he hasn't changed, he's still the same."
Right? Is he still the same? That's the thin line. And now let's see what the physics says about it. If we are at complete rest, we have all the knowledge. And then do we actually change?
If we are at complete rest, we do not change because we are not moving.
Actually, we have all the knowledge. And once we have all the knowledge, do we change?
That is the moment we forget. We already begin to change then.
The moment we start moving, we already have a change. And the faster we move, the slower time passes for us. We already commented on that. The idea here is that as soon as we move, there is always an existing change. If we go to stop in one place, we become thoughtless about the environment and everything that is, and we transmute. That is, we change the code.
How would you phrase the word transmutation in just a few sentences, because many won't understand?
Transmutation.
Sorry, for many people this sounds very complicated, and in some books, because I've read a lot of esoteric books, it's quite like that, from the forbidden words almost.
Mutation or transmutation?
Transmutation, basically.
Transmutation, because mutation is a deviation from the standard. Now let's ask ourselves the question, if you have 4 arms and legs, is that a deviation from the standard?
Who imposed the standard?
Who imposed the standard? And what is a standard? And what if the others are defective? And you show them the way with 4 hands and feet? Isn't this the new thing you need to follow? And Piotr Gariv, a scientist who studies this dependence, gives one suggestion: to study tadpoles at different frequency characteristics. At one frequency, frogs are born with 5 forelimbs. And we have an X-ray for those 5 front limbs. In the other frequency, they are born with 4 hind limbs and 2 forelimbs. And at the third frequency, they have no front limbs at all, only hind limbs. That is, depending on the frequency of the environment. So, we adapt our own filtrations and forms to best adapt to the environment. That is, if you have 4 limbs, is that a mutation? Or is it a development model?
And what's transmutation then?
Transmutation is a conscious mutation that leads to development. I'll give an example. If you realize that you can be at the same time both the flower and the tree and the bench and the man and the animal and the insect and the crawlers, and you can accept the version that every form is also your form, because it completes you to all which is.
With their frequencies.
With their frequencies, with their environments. Then, who is the complement of whom?
All are complements of all.
And every limitation creates a reflection in its own image and likeness. And the limitation itself is a reflection of the reflection it creates. In this situation, we complement each other with each of our reflections, and one flows into the other.
That is, one does not ignore the other, one does not destroy the other, one does not forget the other, one flows into the other.
Yes, it complements and flows into it.
But the other also complements the one so as not to divide it.
And then we are all one. And we are united, which is what the third law said. That is, in order for us to exist, we must realize that we are a whole, which whole has formed limitations that interact with each other. But every limitation has a direction outside itself, to reach the unfolding of the infinite all that is.
And the direction outside itself we call change.
And the direction outside oneself is development and change. Because in order to solve a given task, it is necessary to go to the next step, not to the level from which the task was caused. That is, whatever task we need to solve in our life, we need to step on the next step, to look from above, from a more global point of view. And when we look at this global perspective, let's decide how to solve this task. That was on the front step. And this way we always walk the steps of success. There is only one way of failure, and that is when we give up on what we are doing. Only then can we fail. We give up our existence. The rest of the time, all the steps of our development with a direction outside of ourselves are steps to success. And that's exactly what change is. It is what makes us exist. This is exactly the challenge, to look for ourselves in the infinite, all that is, for we ourselves are all that is. It is contained in us, and we are in it.
Change is inevitable. And everything changes except the first four laws. What a wonderful finish. Kudos, and thanks to everyone who was with us again. We must not stop looking. Change is inevitable, as we all learned today together. You are one. Thank you.